Welcome to Life Stories, where we explore the raw, emotional journeys of love, loss, and redemption. Today's story takes us into the lives of Jack, MIA, and Sarah, a tale of heartbreak, resilience, and the power of second chances. As relationships are tested and lives are transformed, we're reminded that every ending can lead to a new beginning. Join us as we uncover the lessons hidden within their struggles and triumphs. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us to begin today's story. Let's dive into this heartfelt journey together on Life Stories. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. But MIA felt none of its comfort. Her hands trembled as she held her phone, staring at the message from an unknown number. "You should know the truth about Carter. He's been seeing someone else." She read it again, as if hoping the words would change. But they didn't. Her heart sank, a pit forming in her stomach. When Carter walked into the apartment, his usual confident swagger intact, Mia's resolve wavered. She held up her phone, her voice barely above a whisper. "Carter. Who is she?" For a moment, he froze, his expression unreadable. Then, a laugh escaped his lips, cold and sharp. "Ah, so you found out. Took you long enough." Mia's chest tightened, tears brimming in her eyes. "How could you? After everything I've done for you. After everything I've given up." Her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions. Carter leaned casually against the doorframe, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "MIA. Please. You were just a distraction. Did you really think I'd settle down with you?" Her knees threatened to buckle under her. "I left my family for you, Carter. I left Jack. I left Lily, for this?" "That's on you," he replied coldly, grabbing his keys from the table. "I didn't ask you to leave them. That was your choice." As the door slammed shut behind him, MIA collapsed onto the floor, her sobs echoing through the empty apartment. The weight of her decisions bore down on her, crushing her beneath their enormity. She thought of Jack's kindness, his steadfast love. She thought of Lily's innocent smile, her tiny hands reaching out for her. And now, she realized too late what she had lost. Meanwhile, in the quiet of their modest home, Jack struggled to maintain a semblance of normalcy. The absence of MIA loomed like a dark cloud over every moment. But he couldn't afford to let it overwhelm him, not with Lily depending on him. That morning, as he helped her get ready for school, she looked up at him with her wide, hopeful eyes. "Daddy, will Mommy pick me up today?" The question stung like a dagger to his heart. Jack avoided her gaze, focusing instead on fastening the buttons of her little coat. "We'll see. Sweetheart. Just be a good girl at school. Okay?" After dropping Lily off, Jack returned to the house. The silence greeted him like an old friend, but its presence felt heavier now. He tried to distract himself by flipping through the television channels, but nothing held his interest. Then his eyes fell on the envelope sitting on the coffee table, its presence an unspoken challenge. He reached for it, his hands trembling as he opened it. Inside were the divorce papers MIA had sent. The finality of it hit him like a wave, leaving him breathless. Memories flooded his mind, Mia's laughter on their wedding day, the joy of holding Lily for the first time, the quiet, shared moments of love that once defined their life together. He had stood by her through thick and thin. And now, she was gone. But Jack wasn't a man to give up easily, even when life seemed insurmountable. As much as the betrayal hurt, he knew he couldn't crumble, not for his sake, but for Lily's. She needed him to be strong, even if every fiber of his being ached with the pain of abandonment. One evening, as he wheeled himself down the street to pick up a few groceries, an incident jolted him out of his despair. A car screeched to a halt just inches away from him. The driver, a young woman with wide, panicked eyes, jumping out to check on him. "Oh my goodness. Sir. Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jack waved her off with a weak smile. I'm fine. No harm done. But the woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, insisted on helping him. She drove him to the store, assisted him with his shopping, and brought him back home. Her kindness was unexpected and, for Jack, profoundly moving. As they talked, he found himself opening up in a way he hadn't since MIA left. There was something in Sarah's presence, an understanding, a warmth that began to chip away at the walls he had built around himself. Over the following days, Sarah continued to visit, her unwavering support a balm to Jack's wounded spirit. She encouraged him to start physiotherapy, standing by his side as he took his first shaky steps. When he faltered, her words lifted him. Strength isn't just about standing on 2 feet, she said gently. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Jack's journey was far from easy. The physical strain of learning to walk again mirrored the emotional challenges of rebuilding his life. But for the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope, a light in the darkness. With Sarah's encouragement, he began to see a future that wasn't defined by loss but by the possibility of healing and renewal. As Jack took his first steps, the weight of his pain began to lift, replaced by a determination to create a better life for himself and Lily. But even as hope stirred in his heart, the echoes of the past lingered, reminding him that healing would be a long, uncertain road. And though Sarah's presence offered comfort, Jack couldn't help but wonder, was this a new beginning? Or just another chapter in an unfinished story? The answer, he knew, would only come with time. The days that followed were a whirlwind of small victories and quiet struggles for Jack. Physiotherapy became a daily ritual, each session pushing him further toward reclaiming the independence he had lost. Sarah's constant encouragement was like a lifeline. She never let him wallow in self-pity. Yet her empathy and warmth made her presence a comfort rather than a burden. One morning, after an especially challenging session, Jack slumped into the wheelchair, sweat dripping from his brow. Sarah knelt beside him, holding his hand firmly. You're doing great, Jack. Look how far you've come. Jack shook his head, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. It doesn't feel like enough. Lily deserves more than this, more than me. Sarah's gaze softened. Jack, Lily doesn't need perfection. She needs her father. You're showing her what resilience looks like. That's a lesson she'll carry with her forever. Jack glanced out the window, the sound of children playing in the distance stirring a bittersweet ache in his chest. Do you think she'll forgive me for not being enough? Sarah smiled gently. She doesn't need to forgive you for anything, Jack. You're her hero, even if you don't see it. Later that evening, Jack sat by the window, a cup of tea in hand. The house was quiet, but the emptiness felt different, less oppressive, more reflective. Sarah had left a few hours earlier, leaving behind a faint trace of her lavender perfume and a handwritten note. Keep going. You're stronger than you think. Meanwhile, across town, Mia's world was unraveling. The once exciting life she had envisioned with Carter had crumbled into a hollow existence. Carter's indifference had turned cruel, his affections fleeting and superficial. That evening, as she prepared dinner in his apartment, her phone buzzed on the counter. The message was simple yet devastating. You deserve better than Carter. You need to see this. Attached was a picture of Carter with another woman, his arm draped casually around her shoulders as they laughed together. Mia's hands trembled as she stared at the image. The truth she had been trying to avoid was now glaringly obvious. When Carter walked through the door moments later, whistling as he tossed his keys onto the counter, Mia confronted him. Who is she? Her voice was firm, but the tremble in her hands betrayed her. Carter froze for a split second before laughing dismissively. Ah, so you found out. Took you long enough. How could you? Mia's voice cracked, the weight of her emotions breaking through. I left my family for you. I gave up everything. And this is what I get in return. Carter leaned against the counter, his expression devoid of remorse. Mia, You were never more than a distraction. Did you really think I'd settle down with you? His words hit her like a blow. She stared at him. Disbelief etched across her face. I left Jack for you. I left Lily, my little girl. For this. Carter shrugged. That's on you. MIA. I didn't ask you to leave them. As he walked out the door, MIA collapsed onto the floor, her sobs filling the empty apartment. The walls seemed to close in around her as the enormity of her mistakes came crashing down. For the first time, she truly saw the cost of her choices, not just in the pain she had inflicted on herself, but in the hurt she had caused Jack and Lily. Back in Jack's home, life was slowly beginning to change. One day, after dropping Lily at school, Jack received a call that would alter the course of his life. It was from a company he had reached out to months ago, a shot in the dark during a time of desperation. To his astonishment, they wanted to hire him for a major contract. The amount on the table was life-changing. Jack's hands trembled as he hung up the phone, disbelief and excitement mingling in his chest. He immediately called Sarah, his voice shaking as he shared the news. They said yes. Sarah. They want to work with me. It's worth millions. Sarah laughed, her joy evident through the phone. Jack. I told you. This is just the beginning. That evening, Jack celebrated with Sarah and his closest friend, Sam. The small gathering was filled with laughter and clinking glasses, the weight of the past lifting just a little. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jack dared to hope. As the laughter faded and the night grew quieter, Jack found himself reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought him here. His journey was far from over. But for the first time, the future didn't feel like an insurmountable mountain. It felt like a path, challenging, yes, but navigable. And as he looked at Sarah, her laughter lighting up the room, Jack couldn't help but wonder if she might be the one to walk that path with him. For now, though, he would focus on what he could control, being the father Lily deserved and building a life he could be proud of. The road ahead was long, but Jack was finally ready to take the first step. MIA sat alone in the small apartment she had once shared with Carter. The silence around her was deafening, interrupted only by the distant hum of traffic outside. The walls seemed to echo with the hollow choices she had made. The photo of Carter and the other woman was still open on her phone, mocking her with its painful clarity. She couldn't deny it any longer. She had traded a life of love and stability for one of illusion and betrayal. Her thoughts turned to Jack and Lily. She could still picture Lily's tiny hands reaching up for her, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. But those moments were now memories, tainted by the pain of her absence. For the first time, MIA saw the full weight of her actions, and the regret was almost too much to bear. She grabbed her phone, her fingers hovering over Jack's contact. What could she even say? I'm sorry felt too small, too hollow. And yet, she couldn't ignore the growing need to make things right, not for her own sake, but for Lily and Jack. Meanwhile, Jack's life was beginning to find a rhythm again. The success of his new contract had brought more than financial stability, it had reignited a sense of purpose. He spent his days working on plans and strategies, each step bringing him closer to the life he wanted to rebuild. But his evenings were reserved for Lily. One night, as Jack tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with her wide, earnest eyes. Daddy, do you think Mommy will ever come back? She asked softly. Jack's heart ached at the question. He sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a stray hair from her face. I don't know, sweetheart, he said gently, but no matter what happens, you'll always have me. Lily nodded, her small fingers clutching her teddy bear tightly. I miss her. But I love you more, Daddy. Jack smiled, though his heart felt heavy. And I love you more than anything. My little star. Across town, Sarah sat in her kitchen, a cup of tea in her hands. She thought about Jack often, about his strength, his resilience, and the way he was slowly finding his way back to himself. She admired him deeply, but there was a part of her that worried. Was she ready for the kind of life Jack was rebuilding? Could she truly step into the role he seemed to be offering her? The next day, Sarah visited Jack, bringing Lily a box of freshly baked cookies. The little girl's face lit up when she saw her, and the two spent the afternoon playing games and painting pictures. Jack watched them from the doorway, a smile tugging at his lips. For the first time in a long while, his home felt warm, filled with laughter and love. Later that evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Jack and Sarah sat in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows on the walls. "You've done so much for us," Jack said, his voice quiet but full of emotion. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Sarah shook her head, her eyes meeting his. "You don't owe me anything, Jack. You've done the hard part, you've kept going, even when it felt impossible." Jack hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You've been my anchor." Sarah looked away, her cheeks flushing. "Jack," she began, but he interrupted her. "I don't want to rush you, Sarah," he said gently. I want you to know how much you mean to me, to us." The air between them felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. Sarah reached out and placed a hand on Jack's. "You mean a lot to me too," she said softly. "But I need time. This is a big step, and I want to make sure I can give you and Lily what you deserve." Jack nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." As Sarah left that evening, Jack felt a strange sense of peace. He didn't know what the future held, but he was no longer afraid of it. With Lily by his side and Sarah's steady presence in his life, he felt ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere in the quiet of her apartment, Mia made a decision. She couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, she could start to make amends. Picking up her phone, she began to type, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. "Jack, I need to talk. Please." In the quiet of the evening, Jack sat on the porch with Sarah by his side, Lily playing happily in the yard. Life had been a whirlwind of challenges, heartbreak, and resilience. But sitting there, Jack felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Across town, Mia stood outside their old home, her heart heavy with regret but determined to make amends. She knew the road to redemption would be long, but for Lily's sake, she was ready to try. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow, the possibilities of new beginnings filled the air. This was not just the end of one chapter, it was the start of another, brimming with hope, forgiveness, and the promise of a better tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Life Stories for more heartfelt tales of love, growth, and resilience.